Please welcome Academy Award nominee and Tony winner, Andrew Garfield. How you doing, Andrew?
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. Beyond kind. Thank you. Wow, that's so lovely. Thank you so much. Oh, that's really lovely. Thank you. It's just very sweet of you. I'm glad you seem to enjoy it, because this is a labor of love for all of us, and you guys, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, also, thank you for coming back. This is actually the third time you've been in this place.
Oh, I love this place. I love Santa Barbara, and I love this theater. I snuck in for the last song, and just the sound is great, and it's just great. And you guys were all nice and quiet and enjoying yourselves, and it's really, really lovely. So, I love coming here. I love your shoes. Holy shit!
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I have to describe for the back row. They are like bare feet. They're black bare feet. Like they're furry. They're really. They are. I just noticed them in real time. They are incredible.
Very nice, Andrew. Speaking of noticing things, I've seen this film a couple of times, and there is so many realities in the film. There's the fantasy aspect of Jonathan, and then there's the performance, which when he's performing, that's Jonathan's world, and then there's the outside world. How difficult was it for you as a performer to keep track of all the different worlds in the film?
It's such a good question. It's so interesting. What I love about what Lin-Manuel Miranda and Stephen Levinson, our screenwriter, have did with their adaptation of this musical is that they really created an all that jazz kind of inside the psyche of the man kind of structure. So for me, it kind of became timeless. Everything became timeless in the sense that, the performance linked to the past, linked to the future, and I think it's kind of great for what this film is about, in the sense of what John is going through, which is, as we all know, anyone who's lived long enough, we're lucky if we get a few versions of this, a few moments of these big initiations into the next part, the next chapter of our lives, whether it's turning 30, turning 40, getting married, having a child, losing a loved one. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, I'm sure it's pretty universal, that when you're about to cross a big threshold in your life, suddenly past, future, present, your psyche starts to break open a little bit, and images from the past, or dream images, or visions from the future, or everything becomes ultra real. And I think that's what Jonathan's going through. It's a kind of mysterious kind of terror and elation all at once, like full of awe. So for me, as a performer, I was just kind of wandering from place to place, or station to station, in John's psyche. And to be honest, John is always at an 11, no matter where he is, unless he's smoking weed, or which is he did on occasion. I think he gave Stephen Sondheim his first ever joint, which at a party out in the Hamptons that John found himself at one year, but in his early 30s, hilariously, because Stephen really was a mentor to John and really saw his gifts. So for me, it was finding those moments where stillness came in, and those very rare moments where he felt like the clock was about to get him, like death was about to get him, and really kind of pronouncing those moments. Of course, one of those moments is on the phone with Rosa, when he hears that, that his musical that he's been working on for 8 years is not going to go anywhere, like the devastation of that. And of course, the next moment is with Robin's character, Michael, when he reveals the diagnosis. It's really the thing that he's been running from this whole film, as well as at the bottom of the swimming pool when finally the song comes. again, the thing that he's been running from is the thing that he needs, which is his heart, which is Susan, which is the apparition on the side of the lake, you know, the siren on the side of the lake going, go deeper, go down into your unconscious, into your heart. So those moments feel very pronounced. And then, of course, finally, when he's at the piano in the Delacour with that song, Why, where he has no choice but to face reality, to face loss, to face the potential of loss. And I think that's what the ticking is for me. And that's what this unconscious knowing that he is only going to live until 35, and that he's got to get all of his songs out, as much of his song out as he can before he passes, even though the world doesn't seem to want it. The muses want it, and the muses were wise because the muses knew that after he died, that's when he would get the harvest. That's when the people, that us, would finally realize the beauty of his gifts. Like a bit like Van Gogh, you know, thank God he woke up in the face of rejection every day and painted, even though everyone was telling him, fucking stop, dude, you're insane and it looks like shit. He was like, you might be right, but for whatever reason, I have to do it because the muses are working. And I thank God he left the world so much richer because of it. And same goes for John. So that was a long-winded
And he wrote,
answer.
I mean, he wrote it, yeah. I mean, he wrote the piece and he titled it Tick, Tick, Boom. And when I was introducing, I gave them a background a little bit about the fact that he performed this way before Rent, et cetera, et cetera. He was so aware of time running out, although he didn't know he was going to die. What was it like for you to be in his shoes and be with that frame of mind that time is running out, that I need to do things?
It was physical. It was a strange physical thing that happened to me where it did feel like the spirit of John was present, was with us, and I was moving through me in lots of ways. Like I wasn't sleeping during production very much. I was kind of, and I think Lynn felt the same way. And it was a funny moment because after I saw the first cut that Lynn showed me very generously, because our collaboration continued even after we had finished filming. He showed it to me, and he was of course really wanting for me to like it. And as an actor, of course, you want your director to take care of the thing as if it were his baby. And of course, for Lynn, this is his baby. Like there would be no Lin-Manuel Miranda without Jonathan Larson. He saw this show when he was in his early 20s, and he came out of the off-Broadway production white as a ghost, turned to his girlfriend at the time that was there with him and said, I have to walk around the block for the rest of the night. Please do not try to call me. I'm having an existential crisis. I think I know what I have to do with my life. Never talk to me again because I don't have time. So this is why this resonates so much and kind of vibrates off the screen, because Lynn is John is Lynn. But for me, when I saw the first cut, I said to Lynn, I was very moved by it, which is vulnerable for me to say because it's very hard. I very rarely enjoy anything that I've done, and I vulnerably and honestly just love this film, just with the purest heart. The artist in me just loves this film. Wow. To be a part of it, and I said to him, I said, thank you so much, man, because you've held this so damn sacred. And he was like, oh my God, thank God, I'm so happy you're happy. But to be frank, I have bigger fish to fry because I don't want to be haunted by the ghost of Jonathan Larson for the rest of my life. Yeah. And I was like, that's it. And that was the thing that we felt, even like all the way through filming and through post, and the whole thing was that there were bigger fish to fry. There was this North Star, and that was the ghost of John. And I'll tell you a quick story about the Sunday sequence, which I wonder if you were going to ask me. But
yeah, I will down the road. But that's okay.
Well,
that's okay.
But
that's okay. We're running out of time, so you go ahead.
We really are running out of time.
Tick, tick, boom.
But there's a link, because what I find so the Sunday sequence was a Lin-Manuel Miranda, a kind of like brain melting idea, and it was pure Lin musical theater heaven. But the way he described it to me recently was just so beautiful. He said, that song Sunday, the ode to Sondheim.
Sunday in the Park with George.
Precisely. John. It was always John alone at the piano, just being that whole chorus on his own. He never got the chance to hear a bunch of other voices together harmonizing, doing it. So for Lin, it was like, I want to reach the back row of the galaxy, wherever John may be, and I want all of his heroes to be singing this damn song for him, like in these epic, huge, angelic choral harmonies, so that wherever he is, he can rest easy and he can hear it. His music has touched so many people, and it's gone beyond making a film. And I find that really, really, really beautiful.
For those people that are not familiar with musical theater, shame on you. The entire cast in that sequence is, you have Bernadette Peters, you have Bebe Neuwirth, you have Brian Stokes Mitchell, you have the creme de la creme of musical theater. Yeah. It's spectacular. I wanted to ask you about the fact that when I introduced the film, I said you've never done musical theater, and you knew very little about Jonathan Larson. Was that an advantage now in hindsight, the fact that you were just, a newbie about all of this?
I think so, in the sense that I didn't come in with a lot of baggage about Jonathan, or he didn't have a legendary status in my imagination already. I didn't feel like I was, I think the danger with a film like this is that you lionize a person and you kind of idealize them, and And none of us were interested in that. And I love this film because it's not about the success of an artist, it's about the failure of an artist. And then getting up the next morning and doing it again anyway. I find that deeply inspiring. So for me, it was wonderful because I felt like, for a couple of things. When Lin slid the music and lyrics across some restaurant in New York to me 2.5 years ago now, he wrote in the front of the lyric book, this won't make sense to you now, but I promise you it will, sometime soon, Siempre Lin. And no truer words have ever been written to me, because I felt like I was being introduced to a long-lost brother that I didn't know existed. And that was the level of kinship that I felt and feel with John as an artist, as a human being. The way he saw the world, his moral compass, his ethics, his purity, the revolutionary spirit, his longing to, advance humanity and keep the world spinning forward, as Tony Kushner would say. And I just found him so deeply inspiring, and I wanted to apprentice to him. I really wanted to. So I felt like I didn't come with that baggage, and I could really meet the man and not the legend. And I think I would have been really overwhelmed if I had had a pre-existing relationship with John, which maybe would have tightened me up in a way that didn't allow me to explore the more messy parts, the more chaotic parts, the more the less pleasant aspects of what it is to be a struggling artist, and a semi-narcissistic one at that, It was really important that there was a balance. And I had a really great conversation with Julie Larson, who you see at the end in the audience there, John's surviving sister, who's one of our producers, and just the dearest heart, and served as a great inspiration for her. She was on set a lot of the days. And I said to her at the after party for the New York premiere, I was like, oh God, I wish, we had a little cry, and I was like, I wish he was here. And she was like, oh no, you'd get over that very, very quickly if you ever met him. And it was like, it was like the pure sister, he was an arsehole, and he was difficult, and I loved him, and he's nodding his head right now in that kind of John way, I'm just a guy, So I think that was really important for Lin and for me, in order for the film not to be this kind of, polished, two-dimensional portrayal.
Mm-hmm. And so you had never sung musical theater, and you've done a little dancing. We've seen you in the Arcade Fire videos. But, tell us about your training that must have been arduous. So the amazing thing is that Lin saw something in me that I didn't know existed, and he had seen me on stage in Angels in America. Which, by the way, guys, he won the Tony Award for Angels in America. I saw it twice. It was one of the most revelatory performances I'd seen. It was incredible. It was not just 2 hours on stage. It was 6 hours on stage. More. 2 parts.
8.5.
8.5. Yeah, well, I've had
But
a
it
few,
flew by for
It
you.
flew by, absolutely.
Felt
and
like
I saw,
6.
and I saw it twice.
That's
It
crazy.
was one of the
That's
most
crazy.
amazing performances I've ever seen on stage.
Thank you, man. Thank you. That means a great deal.
And you won a Tony for it.
Yeah, yeah, that was cool. I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed that night. After 8 hours, you know what I mean? Like, come on, like, give me the Tony. I'm just kidding. No, just from pure effort. He worked hard. We should give him something. But that's very, very generous of you.
It was
Thank you.
extremely good. But going back
Thank
to
you,
the
man.
fact that, but you'd never done a musical.
Never. And Lynn saw that and thought, well, if he can survive that, and if he didn't lose his voice over the course of that run, I didn't miss a show over the course of a year of doing that play. He thought, well, you probably can sing. And unless you're tone deaf, and which I'm not, thank God. And then I said, because it's a funny, weird story, but like we share a massage therapist in New York City, me and Lynn, and this it's all innocent, it's all above board.
That's too personal.
Listen,
I mean,
we're here. It's late. It's Saturday night, Friday night. Where are we? It's happening. And so, but this guy Greg Miele is one of my best friends. And Lynn was on his table one day and getting the crap kicked out of him. And he turns to Greg. He's like, can Andrew Garfield sing? And my friend Greg said, of course, he's the best singer in the undiscovered Broadway genius. And Lynn was like, oh, interesting, because I've got a project I want to talk to him about. And Lynn leaves that night, and Greg immediately calls me and says, hey, buddy, can you sing? And he says, because Lynn now thinks you can sing, and now you need to be able to sing, because otherwise I'm going to look bad. And I'm like, okay. So then I speak to Lynn, and he says, so Greg says you can sing. And I'm like, when do you want to shoot? And he says, no, not within the year. And I'm like, yeah, I can sing. That's fine, I can sing. And like any good actor, I fully lied. But then he kind of created this amazing space and gave me all these resources with an amazing coach in New York called Liz Kaplan, who works with everybody from Neil Patrick Harris to, Hugh Jackman and Stephen Colbert. Like she's just like the voice whisperer. And I worked with her, and we really just kind of worked at it. And I knew that, you see how, if you have a moment tonight, watch a little bit of John performing his rock monologue on YouTube. It's Boho Days. Just enter Jonathan Larson Boho Days, and you can find him bashing out the piano in a grainy VHS footage, kind of like we recreate in the film, and what you see at the end of the show there. And he sings with his whole being, every cell. It is like he knows he's not got a lot of time to sing his song. It's urgent. It feels like life and death. So I watch that and I think, okay, well, I have to get to the place where I can do that confidently and not care how I sound. There has to be that level of self-belief and also a kind of service to the notes, a service to the ideas that these songs are holding, because that is the only way that I can honor John, because that's the way that John lived. He lived at an 11, every cell singing. So for me, it was like, I took a year, and I was like, I've just got to get to that place where I can just let it fly. And thanks to Lynn and Liz Kaplan and this amazing company of musical theater actors like Robin DeJesus and Alex and Vanessa and Josh. They're all just these thoroughbred racehorses of musical theater. And I was surrounded by their voices, and they would lie to me every single rehearsal and just tell me how great I sounded. They were giving me snaps. They were like, oh, Andrew, no, yeah, you didn't, Andrew. And I'm like, no, I really didn't. And they're like, no, but you did. But they knew that they needed to help the flower bloom. And it wasn't by berating me, it was by lying to me and telling me how great I was. But like I got jumped into this incredible tribe of musical theater people, and we all deserve a tribe of musical theater people in our lives, because they are the most generous, kind people in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. You hear that? We all need a chorus behind us of musical theater people.
Takes a chorus.
You embody him spiritually, physically. You seem like a man possessed. And you mentioned that you had access to the sister, Julie Larson, and we can see his performances on YouTube, as well as the Larson papers on the Library of Congress, his writing. What was is there one particular thing that triggered your understanding of Jonathan Larson?
It was a whole soup. It was a whole stew of ingredients. I would say seeing him perform his one-man show was a big thing. That was very indicative of that life and death feeling that he had. But then there were these old songs. There were these songs about the ecological crisis that I found of his that no one really knows about, and just his. And then there's this amazing woman who is kind of the archivist for John, that keeps the plate that he ate one night on a Wednesday in 1989 of a Chinese restaurant. They went and then his ashes and this is a person that lost her virginity to John, but she's held on to. So she, and I'm not going to mention her name now that I've said that, but she's someone who is so, she'd tell you all if she were here, but it's not my thing to tell. But she was this kind of, this walking history of John. So I stayed very, very close to her, and we did a pilgrimage to his old apartment, which is now being occupied by other theater artists, and it's pretty much exactly the same. And, just standing on the spot where he came in on the night before the first preview of Rent and felt his heart starting to beat very, very fast, and collapsed on the floor in the kitchen just as he entered. I think that fact, his passing at 35, gave me all I needed to know in terms of the ticking, in terms of a man possessed. Because as I say, I think he was a man possessed. And I believe he was possessed for good reason, because the world needed his music, the world needed his gifts, and somewhere deep down he knew he didn't have a lot of time to express it. And of course the context of the AIDS epidemic, that being this external reflection of the thing that he was feeling inside, this literal urgency that he was witnessing with these beautiful young men, a generation of young men and artists. Forget it. It's
just
we don't need it. You're not making notes. It's this generation of beautiful artists and young men that were lost to this terrible pandemic, and lost to the terrible inhumanity of the Reagan administration, and the fact that Reagan never even said the word AIDS for, I think, 4 years in public. And so I think that context, again, so much Angels in America, so much great, urgent life and death art that exposes and shines a light on what really matters and the meaning of being here. I think it's only on that edge between life and death can we fully start to even approach the question of what we're meant to be doing while we are breathing, while our hearts are beating. And there was a line, I find this very moving and touching and quite spooky, prescient, that there was a line that there was in the original Tick, Tick, Boom that the producers had to cut after, or they felt they had to cut after John had passed away, because it felt too on the nose. And the line was, "Sometimes I feel like my heart is going to explode." And ultimately that is literally physically what happened. So there was this knowing, and I think that was maybe the key for me in terms of living as urgently and as a man possessed as you see him living. And that felt very important.
One of the scenes that I love is I think you referred earlier, swimming, and it was actually the Tony D'Ippolito pool in New York City. And that scene, we hear the stream of consciousness of him not only creating, but being aware of things. Can you tell us about, was that difficult to deal with, his stream of consciousness and his awareness in that scene?
Yeah, I mean, well, that pool we discovered when we was location scouting. So there was someone there that said, "Oh yeah, no, this is John's pool," Like there were strange, weird, serendipitous, mysterious. It was like the universe really wanted this movie to be made, and we were shut down by COVID and all these different things, and there were so many things that worked out. And like for instance, where we shot the one-man show, the frame of the film was at New York Theatre Workshop, which is the place where
Rent started.
Where Rent had its first off-Broadway run, where the night after John passed away. So, and we shot all of that post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we couldn't get that location because there was a show going on there. And then suddenly, everything falls apart, the world caves in, but then there's John pulling some strings from wherever he is and going, hey, Lynn, maybe check out New York Theatre Workshop again, see if it's available. I'm pretty sure it is, because there's no live theater in New York, and you will be the only live theater in New York during the pandemic, and you will be doing my one-man show to a very select audience, and that is the most healing shit I've ever heard. So get on it. So there was all these serendipitous things like that. But with the swimming, it was really just a kind of beautiful couple of days that we had, one day that we had in that pool, because for me, that scene was all about dropping into the heart, dropping into the gut, and getting this out of the way. Like, the thing that he's running away from is the thing that he needs, and it is Susan. It is his best friend, Michael, and the key to this missing song is at the bottom of the pool. It's at the bottom of his heart. It's at the bottom of his unconscious. The bottom of the water. So for me, it was, luckily I was raised by a swimming coach father. He runs the number one. This is me showing off on my father's behalf. He runs the top swimming club in the UK, Guildford City Swimming Club. You're welcome, Dad. All the crew, they had a stunt swimming double for me and all this stuff, and all the crew thought we were going to be there for a couple of days because it's a lot of swimming and they wanted to get a lot of different stuff, and they thought I would need lots of rest, but they were very surprised, and I think we gained a day in the schedule because I just was like, this is not me showing off. This is the hell of my childhood coming to fruition, Like, I wish I wasn't this good at swimming, but I'm really fucking good at swimming because my dad would not have it any other way. 5 a.m., 5 days a week. Thank you, Father. But it paid off. And I know for me it was a wonderful thing because I think there's so much angst in John. There's so much anguish and tornness and a kind of pain, and and a running. So I think in that scene, it was just this purely physical thing that I could throw myself into. Was the instinctive intention for John in that moment where he's literally got nothing else to do, and he has no choice. He has to just bang his head against the wall until his head falls off, and until he can drop into his imagination, until he can drop into his heart, and that's where everything gets revealed. So actually, it was a very headless kind of, exercise for me. And then the song itself, I love that song. It's such a fun, strange, as you say, stream of consciousness song. That was hard. Recording that song was hard because it's so, it's so alive and it's so propulsive, and it's just it's a lot of thought. It's the unconscious speaking. It's trying to get to the unconscious, which is the everything, right? Which is where all creativity comes from. So it's like you're edging towards that, and so the recording of that was quite challenging. Yeah.
And speaking of recording, how did it feel to you to be in a recording studio with Lin-Manuel Miranda and the team behind Hamilton?
Dude, I mean, come on. I was sneaking pictures of me with Lin in the background on his phone, sending it to all my buddies. He doesn't know this, but I was literally texting on a thread of all my theater friends back home in the UK, just going, I don't know what I'm doing. This shouldn't be allowed, and I'm getting paid. It was absolutely insane, and but it's a weird thing because Lin is this guy that just. He's a perpetual 6-year-old that hasn't been traumatized yet. He's missing a couple of synapses. He has no doubt about himself. He just does what he envisages, and it's contagious. Suddenly you forget your own trauma and you kind of start doing things much freer. I remember when I was very nervous to sing at first, and I remember, you know, I was just like umming and ahhing and kind of hemming and hawing and very neurotic about it. And he kind of took me aside and he says, whoever gave you this idea that you couldn't do certain things, I want to have a stern word with them. And it was that kind of mentorship, that kind of like, but it was contagious. Like suddenly you start to feel like maybe there's things that I can do that I have never dared to dream I could do. So the way I put it is that he made a dream of mine come true that I didn't even know I had because it was so long buried. Like the idea of being in a story like this, in a musical like this, and singing at this level with these people and playing piano for that matter, it was never something that I allowed myself to even envisage. But this is the magic of being around Lin, is that you start to believe that it's Disneyland. You kind of start to believe that anything's possible. It's kind
And by
of
the
amazing.
way, you had never played piano until this, and you learned how to play piano. Yeah. So.
I had a year. That's a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was fun. It was really
Yeah.
fun. Like I've always wanted to play piano, so like, you know.
I know people that have been trying
Lucky.
to play piano for years, and they're still like tinkle tinkle little star. I mean, he's sitting in the front row, right there.
You just got called out. No.
He's the one actually. I took him to see Angels in America, and he saw the intermission, and he's like, it was 2 hours into intermission, the first half, and he goes like, "How long is this going for?" And I said, "You're only seeing half of the first half. You still have 8 more hours to go."
I'm sorry. It's not for everyone.
I know. So learning to play the piano.
Yeah, I mean, like, who doesn't want to get paid to learn an instrument that you've always wanted to learn? Like, it was just beautiful. I don't know what else to say about it. When I say I learned piano, that like I got the basics, and then I learned a few of the songs by rote, basically, and it's probably all gone at this point. But I can still play some of Why and a little bit of 3090, and but Why was a really special one because. And this was bad because Lin, you know, I saw the schedule. Why is the song in the Delacorte in Central Park, and it's just me and the piano, and it's that kind of big. It's the big emotional crossroads where the moment that John has to meet, and it was definitely the scariest thing in the film for me to attempt. I knew it because it was the most important moment. And I got the schedule a couple of weeks before we started shooting, and at end of first week, Thursday of the first week, it says, "Why?" in the Delacorte. And I turned to Lin, and I was like, "Hey, what? You want to do this in the first week?" And he said, "Yes, buddy, it's going to be great, and you're gonna just knock it out of the park, and you'll clear the runway for the rest of the shoot, and you'll get it behind you, and blah blah blah." No, wait. Why are we doing this in the first week? And he says, "Oh, because we're going to lose the Delacorte. We're going to lose the location if we don't do it in the first week, because another show is going in." I'm like, "Okay, thank you. I hate you, and I have to go and prepare for the next 2 weeks nonstop." But he was right. Like that night was very, very special because Julie was there, John's sister was there, and it was very important that we got that live. It was very important to me that one was sung live, because it's not a song that has been pre-written by John in his imagination. He's finding it as he goes. It's improvised, and it's a deeply emotional moment, and raw and cracked and messy and found. The images are coming, and he's putting words to it. It's like an improvisation that he needs to do in order to understand how to carry on living in the face of such impossible loss, potential loss. And we did one take, and it was fine. And then we did the second take, and it was one of those just like such a great like relief, because you know Lin's an easy cry anyway, but like he came out from behind the monitors, and he was just like, "I think we can all go home. We're not going to, but I think we can." And it was just this wonderful moment of, okay, now I can play this part, and I know that he's going to be honored. I know that we are doing our damnedest just to honor this man, and I really felt it that night, because you know it's a really vital moment in his journey, and to see Lin, who this show means so much to, and to see Julie, of course, you know, his sister kind of coming out from behind the monitors, just kind of saying, you know, we're good, we've got it, we can just carry on making the film now, and I think we could honor John. It was just incredibly moving for me, and it freed me up just to kind of really play for the rest of the shoot. And as you can see, he's all play. He's not. It's all alive. There's nothing planned. It's all spontaneous, and that's what he was. He was constantly inventive. He was Willy Wonka, you know. He was just pure imagination and this mad scientist of musical theater, and there was no plan, and he just let the muses lead him. And that's kind of what we did on set. We just kind of prayed to John and said, follow your impulses, and my body will follow yours, and we'll see where we end up. And that was what was beautiful about playing all these scenes, and especially that song. It was very, very a profound night.
You mentioned New York City, and you shot it at the Delacorte and all over New York City. And John, New York City is so important in this film, and he romanticizes the city, but at the same time is aware of the harshness of the city as well. You know, tell us about shooting in New York City.
Well, I remember. I mean, like we've had maybe 3 or 4 versions of shooting and working in New York City over the last 2.5 years because of everything that we've all been going through and because of the pandemic. But you know, the most romantic period was rehearsals because we had no idea what a pandemic was, and it was, you know, spring, summer, and we were just like, and I was walking around with a perm, and I was taking the subway, and I was listening to Jonathan Larson music, and I was imagining where I was going to get to with my voice, and I was learning piano with some old dude on the Upper East Side of New York, and then I was going down to Chelsea and hanging out with Liz Kaplan, and then I was going to rehearsal with Alex Lacamoire, and then Lynn was texting me, and I was riding the subway, and I was listening to Jonathan Larson music. It was heaven. I was literally living the Jonathan Larson fantasy. And then we start shooting, and then everything gets terrifying, and then you kind of like, but then a night like the Delacorte, you're in the middle of Central Park in the middle of the night, and no one's around, and it's just you and a film crew freezing your tails off, but you're trying to reach for something profound together and sensitive, and it's just such a beautiful feeling to be under. And it was a clear night, you know. It was stars and moon, and you know, trying to call in the spirit of John. Like, it doesn't get any better than that in an open air theater where there's room for him to arrive. It was just like so stunning. And then of course the pandemic happened, and we shut down the night where, on our first night of actually shooting at John's apartment, which is spooky unto itself. And then I had, you know, the first half of lockdown pandemic just alone in New York City, alone in the West Village, and I got a bike, thank God, and I was riding around Central Park and just longing to go back to work, longing to go back to the thing that was so fulfilling. And my brother was out in London. He's a pulmonary, he's a lung doctor, and you know, he's had a hell of a 2 years, and suddenly, you know, he was the most vital person in the world, and thank God he you know, he exists and everyone like him exists. And then artists start to feel totally purposeless. You know, at the beginning of that pandemic, you know, the amount of devastation and the amount of lostness that artists felt and are still feeling to a degree was kind of profound. And we all became each other's support system. But then then New York became this wasteland, this strange, barren, surreal, post-apocalyptic, empty place. And then all of the, you know, protests happened in the wake of George Floyd. And suddenly people took to the streets and took over the streets, and suddenly life was back in the streets, maybe bigger than ever. And then, thank God, Netflix and, you know, our producers, Julio and Celia Costas, figured out how we can get back. And then everyone's back on set with masks and PPE and visors. And the cast have to form a bubble and not go out, not leave out. We get to walk around the block and then go to set and then go back and get tested 5 times a week. You know, it's that intensity which we were all so happy to do, but then there's no New York anymore. It's just us in our little apartment block. We go to set, but then what happened, which was so interesting, because we're all masked up, apart from the time between action and cut. And as we all know, the time between action and cut is that sacred ritual space where you can hear a pin drop, hopefully, and you get to explore an imaginary world, and actually being able to take off all of the layers that the actors were feeling between each other, and to finally be able to kiss and hug and breathe the same air, it made us even more hungry for connection, which I imagine was very, very similar to what was going on during the AIDS epidemic, and the amount of affection, the amount of intimacy that was being craved. And, so that time between action and cut started to feel even more sacred and kind of holy in a way. And I remember a particular night when we were doing the Boho Days party, where John kind of like gets the party going with that one. And at the end of that night, Lynn said, okay, 30 minutes, party. We got 2 cameras handheld, make out with each other, grind on each other, dance, sing, take pictures, do whatever the fuck you want, act as if there's no pandemic happening, and just like make love to each other. And that was like, it was Bacchanalian. It became this kind of like, we were all so hungry for connection, physical and otherwise, that it was just this really beautiful respite, a kind of like an escape for one moment from, the loss that we'd all been through in different ways, and the kind of the lack of love and intimacy that we'd all been feeling. So there was something, anyway, yeah. And then we premiered it in New York last week, which was a theater full of theater people. Yeah. And it was suddenly, we were back, and that whole street at the Schoenfeld Theater, Company was having its first preview next door. There was a special performance of Spring Awakening happening on the same street. So we came out, and the street, that block of New York was like, it was like Mardi Gras. It was crazy. So like, there's been all of these different experiences of New York that we've had all the way through this experience, which has been really interesting unto itself.
I don't recall talking to an actor about their experience filming a movie with so much excitement and passion. And how has this changed you, playing this role?
Oh, man. Well, that's sweet of you to say. I feel very lucky that I do have this amount of excitement and joy running through my body when I talk about John, but it's tiring because it's John not letting me not talk about it with passion and excitement. I mean that. Every time I come to talk to people about this film, I'm just out there, I'm just like, my head is hanging, I'm very, very tired, I'm trying to keep my eyes awake, and then I literally come out, and it's like John goes, nope, I need my music out there, you gotta sell the people my goddamn music, the ripple's gotta keep on moving, baby, I wanna hear it on the back, the back row of the galaxy, keep singing, and like, because he possesses you. Because he doesn't let you off the hook, and then I'll leave, and I'll say hello to everybody, and then I'll leave, and I'll probably just pass out and be very, very anxious because it's like he runs through you like a freight train. But what a way to spend the day, because like it's the truth. Like oh, God, I love it so much. It's so annoying because it is tiring, but I love it so much because we are all here for such a short period of time. And I had a tremendously hard loss that happened before we started shooting in my life, a personal loss. And of course, when that happens, everything changes. The landscape changes, reality shifts. You start to really understand that it is ephemeral and that we are only here for a fleeting moment. And then you start to go deeper into those questions of, well, so what are we going to do? What am I going to do? What are you going to do? What are we all going to do? And the way that John lived was in total accordance with his own unique gifts and with his own very specific way of seeing the world, with his own inner ethic. And I find that deeply inspiring, and I think it's the way that this has changed me and the way that this has affected me is that it's just enhanced my awareness of how short and sacred us all breathing in the same room together is, and how we're not going to be able to do this forever. And and what better way to spend the day than to honor an artist who was propagating that fact and making sure that we were all awake to that fact, to the miracle of us all being in a room together and sharing something communally. And that's what theater is, that's what cinema is, and that's what art is. And I think, you know, there's a line that Michael Robbins' character says, oh, that's what the world really needs, more art. And I improvised. I said, yeah, actually, yes, that's exactly what the world needs. And I truly believe that, because it reminds us of who we are. It reminds us that this is not just a meaningless experience, that we get to make our own meaning. So I'm just really grateful that I get to make such meaning out of life and share it with people. And that's everything.
We need more Andrew Garfield. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Get home safe. Thank you very much.
That's my little pooch.